let's just jump right into it. Today, we're doing a complete, deep dive explainer on how our body's amazing internal transportation network actually functions. From the microscopic cells carrying oxygen to the heavy-duty engine beating right there in your chest, we're going to break down the totally fascinating mechanics of body fluids and circulation.
Are you ready to truly understand your body's pumping system? We are going on a micro to macro journey today. We'll kick things off with blood and its main components, then get into blood groups and clotting, check out a quiet middleman called lymph, and finally, we'll explore the structure of the human heart, the cardiac cycle, and ECG, before wrapping up with double circulation.
Okay, so Section 1, blood and its main components, the river of life. Let's start at the cellular level with the fluid itself.
So what is blood exactly? It's really easy to just think of it as a red liquid, but it's actually a highly complex living tissue. By definition, it's a fluid connective tissue of mesodermal origin. That basically means it arises from the middle layer of an embryo. It acts as your body's main circulating medium, literally connecting your little finger all the way to your toes, making sure every single cell gets exactly what it needs.
Now, if you were to put blood in a test tube and spin it in a centrifuge, it separates into these really fascinating layers. You might actually be surprised to hear that 55% of our blood is just plasma. It's a watery, kind of straw-colored fluid. The remaining 45%, well, that's made up of the actual cells, which we call the formed elements.
Let's look a little closer at these formed elements. We've got three main characters floating in our bloodstream. First up, erythrocytes, or red blood cells. These guys are your oxygen transporters, absolutely packed with iron, and they live for about 120 days. Second, leukocytes, or white blood cells. This is literally your internal army, the body's soldiers like neutrophils and lymphocytes that provide your immunity. And finally, thrombocytes, or platelets. These are tiny, irregular fragments that are absolutely essential for emergency repairs.
Moving right along to Section 2, blood groups and clotting, the rules of the river. Let's see how the body actually stops a leak.
This brings us to the ABO blood group system. You see, your blood group is determined by the specific antigens on the surface of your red blood cells. Group A has A antigens, Group B has B antigens. But Group O is totally unique. Because it has a completely empty surface with zero antigens, it perfectly illustrates why Group O is the universal donor. I mean, think about it. Because of that empty surface, it can be donated to literally anyone without their immune system attacking it.
Now, we don't usually just say your blood is type A, right? We say A positive or A negative. Crucially, this plus or minus comes from the Rh factor, which is an antigen first discovered in the rhesus monkey. If you have this antigen on your cells, you are positive. If it's absent, you're negative. This simple positive or negative distinction becomes incredibly important, especially during pregnancy, where mismatched Rh factors between a mother and her baby require special medical attention.
So what actually happens when this river leaks? Well, your body acts like a master mechanic in a process called the coagulation cascade. Here's the breakdown. Step 1, an injury occurs, and platelets rush in, releasing a substance called thromboplastin. Step 2, this triggers an enzyme called thrombokinase. Step 3 is the activation phase, where a protein called prothrombin converts to thrombin, and this heavily relies on calcium to work. Finally, Step 4, thrombin converts fibrinogen into fibrin. And this fibrin spins a literal mesh web that traps blood cells and completely seals up the leak. How cool is that?
Let's shift gears to Section 3, lymph, the body's middleman, the extracellular network. Because blood isn't the only fluid hard at work inside you. See, as blood rushes under high pressure through your tiny capillaries, some water, white blood cells, and nutrients actually get pushed out into the surrounding tissue spaces. This leaked, colorless fluid is called lymph. It acts as this amazing exchange hub, basically catching all these leaked components, facilitating the delivery of nutrients to your tissues, and eventually returning all this fluid right back into the main veins. It's the ultimate middleman. Okay, on to Section 4, structure of human heart, the engine room. Let's dive right into the core of it all, the incredibly powerful human heart.
I really want to highlight something crucial here. The heart doesn't actually make blood. It purely acts as a heavy-duty water motor to pump it all around the body. Originating from the mesoderm, it sits right between your lungs in the mediastinum, and it's about the size of a clenched fist. To protect this vital engine, it's safely encased in a double-walled bag called the pericardium, which is filled with shock-absorbing fluid. Inside, it's got 4 distinct chambers,
2 upper atria, and 2 lower ventricles, all separated by thick walls called septums.
Now, between these chambers are doorways, or valves, and their whole job is to prevent blood from ever flowing backward. Let me share a brilliant little memory trick from our source material to help you remember which valve is where. Just think of the phrase lab rat. On the left side, the atrium uses the bicuspid, or mitral valve. That's LAB. And on the right side, the atrium uses the tricuspid valve. That's RAT. Lab rat. It's just an incredibly simple way to keep the anatomy straight in your head.
But what actually makes this engine pump? Well, your heart has a built-in electrical spark. The SA node, or sinoatrial node, is the heart's natural pacemaker. It's a specialized patch of tissue that generates its own electricity. We're talking about 70 to 75 action potentials per minute, without any external electrical stimulus from the brain whatsoever. Your heart literally generates its own rhythm.
Moving right along to Section 5, Cardiac Cycle and ECG, Decoding the Rhythm. Now that we know the parts, let's see this engine in motion. But before we get into the numbers, I gotta ask you a question. Does your heart really make a duck-duck sound? You know, we hear it in Bollywood movies and pop culture all the time. But is that what's actually happening inside your chest? Let's go ahead and bust that myth completely. It is absolutely not duck-duck, it is lub-dub. And here's the crazy part. It's not the sound of a muscle squeezing at all. It is the physical sound of the heart's doors slamming shut. The first sound, lub, is caused by the closing of the tricuspid and bicuspid valves. The second sound, dub, is the closing of the semilunar valves as blood exits the heart. Lub-dub, lub-dub.
So what's the actual timeline of one lub-dub? Well, a single full cardiac cycle takes just 0.8 seconds. When you break it down, atrial contraction takes up 12.5% of that time. Ventricular contraction takes 37.5%, but remarkably, for exactly 50% of the cycle, literally half of a heartbeat, the entire heart is actually in joint diastole, just totally relaxing and peacefully filling up with blood.
Okay, let's decode those hospital monitor lines we always see. The ECG. Every little bump on that readout tells the doctor exactly which part of your heart muscle is firing. The first small bump, called the P wave, shows atrial depolarization, meaning the atria are contracting. That massive spike right in the middle, the QRS complex, represents ventricular depolarization, so the powerful ventricles are firing. And the final bump, the T wave, shows ventricular repolarization, which is basically the ventricles resetting and returning to normal.
Finally, let's zoom out for Section 6. Double circulation, the infinite loop. We've seen the pump, now let's look at the master loop.
As humans, we use a double circulation system. It's brilliant how our body simultaneously runs 2 massive transport routes at the exact same time, without the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood ever mixing. In pulmonary circulation, the right side of the heart pumps used, deoxygenated blood over to the lungs to pick up fresh oxygen. Then, in systemic circulation, the left side of the heart pumps that fresh, oxygenated blood out to the entire body, eventually returning it empty to start the whole cycle over again.
Now, the heart is incredibly hardworking, but it's also fair. It distributes blood everywhere, sure, but it also takes a 10% cut of that oxygenated blood just for itself through its own separate coronary circulation. I mean, it absolutely needs that fuel for its own endless lifetime of pumping.
We've covered the fluid, the plumbing, and the motor. Now, remember how by counting those massive QRS complexes we decoded earlier, you can find a person's heart rate? Well, I'm going to leave you with this thought. How many QRS complexes are happening inside your chest right now in a single minute? Seriously, feel your pulse. Every single beat is a perfectly timed electrical charge and a mechanical contraction keeping you alive. It is truly mind-blowing when you stop to think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.